Oh, this is gonna be crazy.
Okay, destroy the building.
Alright, so hello everyone and welcome to another episode of SpraynPray1000's Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000, and today I'm going to talk about the latest in a long-running line of games, the Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which is the latest in the Assassin's Creed series. Basically, we're going to jump right into it. Assassin's Creed, as you know, is a third-person, open-world, action-adventure stealth game. Like usual, this game follows in the roots of it and in the path of its predecessors. And it features not one, but two protagonists, the twins Evie and Jacob Fry, who are two assassins that come to London to free it from its oppressors. And the gameplay of this game, again, running off of the Unity engine, is great. And let me start off right away before I forget. This game runs a million times better than Unity ever did. Unity, when it came out, was a big mess. It was notorious in the gaming industry for being a horrid launch. And Syndicate does not live up to that, thankfully. Syndicate feels polished, it feels well-rounded, it feels like they took the time that they should have to, sandpaper all the edges, make sure everything worked well. And I like that about this game. Right off the bat, you could tell that the game has a much stabler frame rate. It has much better graphics. It holds up a lot better when you're doing complex and in-depth things. So if there's explosions or there's lots of people on the screen, the game holds up. It doesn't, go right down the toilet, which was a problem with Unity. And that's good. So right off the bat, functionality-wise and, everything else, this game feels great. It feels like it was designed to run on these consoles. It feels like it was well done, which I cannot say for Unity, but we're not reviewing Unity, so I need to step off of that. So the gameplay of this game is very similar to Unity. You basically run around, you can assassinate people while you're stealthing. There's open combat like usual, the usual kind of Assassin's Creed things that you're probably used to at this point. The combat in this game is a little bit more like Batman Arkham series a bit, where it's more fast-paced. It's more about, doing complex combos and stuff to try and knock people off guard. And it's a lot more different than, the sword-based gameplay of, every other Assassin's Creed up until now, really. It's more about, fist fighting and stuff. And while you do use your weapons, they're really only there to improve your stats and, execute people. You can do multi-kills now in this game. Although, admittedly, I will say that the multi-kills are kind of a bit difficult and a bit glitchy to kind of pull off. Essentially, the way combat works is you try to lower people down into this state called near death, where they're basically not a threat anymore. And then once you have multiple people set up around you, you can do multi-kills. Although it's kind of weird, though, because the way that the multi-kills work is a little bit awkward. Like, sometimes you'll have multiple people around you and it won't trigger. But anyway, additionally, the parkour returns, and basically every good thing that I like about Unity is back in this game, which is really sweet. You got your murder mysteries, which I'll talk to again later on. You've got your various side missions, races, heists, stealing stuff. You've got your London stories, which are basically important people from London history, Karl Marx, stuff like that. And those are pretty fun and interesting to do. You've got your usual main missions that expand the narrative. So basically, gameplay-wise, this game holds up. All I will say is that, the game uses a leveling system that kind of gets outdated after a certain point, I feel. Once you're up there in levels, it really kind of doesn't matter anymore. Additionally, the game kind of has... Really, you don't need to use any of that complex stuff in combat. The game gets pretty easy towards the end. I mean, then again, that's always been Assassin's Creed, though, so I guess it's really not a fair comparison. But the combat and the gameplay of this game really holds up, I feel. I like the fact that they bring back the assassination missions where there's multiple objectives and multiple ways to accomplish your assassination. The kind of stuff that was in Assassin's Creed 1, and then they brought it back for Unity. I'm glad to see that returns. The free run down, I'm glad to see returns. So it's really fun to, kind of liberate the districts of London. Although, really, it's kind of repetitive once you get on towards the later ones. It is certainly a fun process to do all the side missions and stuff. And I really like that a lot about this game. So definitely gameplay-wise, if you've enjoyed other Assassin's Creeds or you're looking in, between the parkour, the combat, the stealth, the exploration, it's definitely got a lot of good stuff to it. Now, let's talk about the flipping, okay? Like, the bad part about this is that the combat and everything in this game gets old, and it gets old pretty quickly, because unlike Batman, they don't really do much to diversify it. They don't really do much to kind of keep it fresh, to kind of mix it up a little bit. And it's certainly not as complex at all as other Assassin's Creed games. And even, definitely not Batman, but even other Assassin's Creed games had more complex combat than this. Really, most of the enemies in this game can be summed down to break defense and mash the attack button, and countering really quickly if you can pull that off. And even if you get hit after a certain point, it doesn't even really matter, because the combat in this game has just been dumbed down and simplified so much. I don't even think I died from combat, except maybe like once in this game. It's really easy, and it's really a pushover, and later on when you upgrade stuff, it really almost just becomes more of a joke than what you would have expected from Assassin's Creed 4 and Rogue. And I remember a lot of people saying that the combat in Assassin's Creed 4 and Rogue basically boiled down to simple use tool and then kill someone. Well, this game, they just remove that tool step. You just insta-kill people outright sometimes. So it just basically becomes a means to an end, not even really. It just becomes the end, and it doesn't really go anywhere. Additionally, the stealth is a little bit weird in this game. Sometimes when people are alerted but not, actively hostile, you can still stealth take them out. Other times you can't, which is weird. And I don't know why it's sort of like half and half, but I don't know. It's just a little weird the way that they handled stuff like this. And it really doesn't age very well. Now, I'm going to talk about the story here for a minute. The story of this game, I think, is all right, but it doesn't go anywhere. It really just kind of stagnates, I almost want to say, once you reach a certain part. So I'll give an example. Basically, the way that the story is divided up is that, and this is not really much of a spoiler, I don't think, but one character wants to reclaim London, wants to build up a gang and basically have gang fights and whatever and do crazy stuff and just, be free and open and all that stuff. And the other character wants to, basically progress the typical Assassin's Creed story, which is, we need to get an artifact, the Templars can't have it, and we need to make sure that they never get it. And yeah, that's basically what they want to do. So the narrative is basically split between these two different directives, between these two different characters. And that's cool and all, but the game only really ever explores one of these narratives, and it just kind of shoehorns in the other one, the typical Assassin's Creed plotline, just kind of shoehorns it in randomly at certain points, and it doesn't really get much of the spotlight at all. In fact, that plotline really is not very fleshed out. It's pretty simplistic, and it's more simplistic than the story itself. It's just like, oh, there's this thing. We're working towards getting the thing. Oh, we got the thing. Oh, that's it. And then the ending, which I'm not going to say, is like a complete, why would they do this? It makes no sense that they would go through all this effort to not do what they came to do. To basically, the way that the story ends is just so bland, boring, generic, stereotypical. And the game starts out fine. If a game starts out bland, boring, typical, generic, that's fine. But other Assassin's Creed games have started out either excellently, differently, or even blandly, generically, and then they spiral off of there. Even Unity had a better storyline than this. Unity had a pretty, somewhat predictable ending, but what happens with the character development, the story behind it, was great at the end of Unity. The way that Arno developed as a person, you could see over the course of Unity, even as glitchy and as messed up as the game was, the story itself was not that bad. The ending might have been a little bit, oh, whatever, generic, predictable, the stupid stuff happens along the way. But Syndicate suffers from no character development, really. No kind of greater risk or anything. The real-world sequences are just kind of pushed to a back burner. They're almost never referenced. It's not like, you really get anything. And that's the same problem I had with Unity, is that the real-world sequences just kind of got thrown away in Unity. They almost didn't fucking matter. They spent like 7 games building up the real world sequences, and then they just kind of threw them away. Now, what I will say is that they did do a good job of tying it in with Rogue, with tying it in with the rest of the franchise. But at the same time, the story of this game suffers from like poor character development from the fact of the Fry twins and the Victorian London era of stuff. And while it is always interesting to meet all these different historical figures, there's no development. There's no like risk reward. You know what I mean? Like the story doesn't really evolve. It's just, oh, I want to take over London. I want to find the artifact. That's the whole story. Like it never went from anywhere from there. There's no risk, there's no loss, there's no, none of that. So the story of this game gets a pass from me. It's like, it's barely passable, in fact. I would only say that the only redeeming parts about it are the interesting dichotomy between the twins and the real world sequence being redeemed at the end. That's about it. Otherwise, this story would just fail out because there's nothing interesting about it to me. I feel that it's almost sleep-worthy at some points. I feel like a lot of the sequences are filler missions. Like, think about the story I just described. Okay, we want to get this something so the Templars don't get it. We got to make sure that we do this, this, and this to get it. Okay, at the end of the game, we do whatever with it. That's like a normal sequence in like Assassin's Creed 4 or 2. Like, I don't understand why it had to be in this game, why it had to be like a whole game. It feels to me like what they did for this could have been like 1 or 2 sequences in the old Assassin's Creed games. And really, I just think they didn't want to put too much work into it. Now, graphics-wise, again, the game, at this point, and in every review I do of a PS4 game, the graphics are great. Of course they are. At this point, there's no real reason for me to fucking say it anymore. The graphics are, of course, really good. Like, the sound is great in this game. There's glitches here or there. That's what I'm more worried about, is the gameplay and, the narrative. And the gameplay of this game is good, but repetitive, gets old. You don't really do much. It's nothing you haven't done before. They don't find ways to innovate it and keep it interesting like what they did with Black Flag and Rogue, which is where you do sailing. You got all this other stuff. And Rogue, in particular, I thought was on a great track with the way that they mixed the whole typical area control and the sailing. So really what it feels to me like they did is that the narrative of this game can't really stand on its own. So what they basically do is they pass off side content and stuff like that as being more integral to the story. And now usually you would say, what the fuck, that should be a good thing. But really it's done just because the narrative of the game isn't very long, isn't very, in-depth and good and interesting, and it's just kind of there, So they pass off, okay, well, here's a couple side missions you can do. And I mean, yeah, the side missions are interesting, but they're like every other game, they get repetitive. If you have 100 different missions to like open fucking chests, do I really want to sit around for 5 hours running around a virtual city finding and opening chests? Like, that's something I do when I'm bored, or if I like the game so much I want to do 100% completion. Just running around opening chests is boring, and that's not something I would want to do. Like, the area conquest, I'll give them because it's interesting. Area conquest is divided up. Each area of the game, which there's 7 in London, has miniature, like, little districts in them, and each one is freed, like other Assassin's Creed games, by killing the manager of the district or doing whatever little side mission. So maybe you'll be liberating child workers, maybe you'll be killing a Templar, maybe you'll be bounty hunting, that kind of stuff, And then ultimately, you got to kill the gang leader, and then you have a gang war, then you take over the district, and then basically, what I just described, you rinse and repeat 7 times. Now, I know it sounds like I hated the game. The game is good. The game is satisfactory. The game is interesting. My thing is that the game is not really worth $60 because it gets old. Like, there's a lot of stuff, don't get me wrong, but the game is not worth $60. Just like how Rogue wasn't worth $60 because the game was short and there really wasn't much to do in that game when you think about it. This game is long, but none of it's quality. Like, Rogue had a great budding storyline that they never did anything with, admittedly, because the game was so damn short. But on the flip of that, this game has so much shit, but why would you want to do any of it? It doesn't add, it doesn't build to anything. For doing minimal effort and using the experience boosts I was given by, I guess, some pre-order bonus, I don't even remember, I was able to breeze through the game. I got to level 10 before sequence, 6, and level 10 is, the max level you can get to. in the game. I got maxed out in-game weapons by as early as like sequence 7. You know, it's just like I'm one-hitting everything at the end of the game. Like not even Rogue was this easy. So really, not a fan of a lot of what they did. But the game holds up. Like it runs is a good thing. But really, would I buy this for 60? Because there's no multiplayer mode, there's no co-op mode. The entire game is just focused on this single player. And I mean, I don't know if I would really recommend it for 60. I would say that for 40, maybe, or 40 is like a good price. 30 is a definite. Anything below 40, in my opinion, is a good price. But really, there's not much to bite on for this game. Like the problems with the story. Like if you're looking for a strong narrative with strong characters, you're not really going to find them here. The characters are basically the same archetypes that they start out with, and they don't really evolve from there. And there's really nothing. Usually in Assassin's Creed, there's some loss, there's some character development, like Ezio, definitely. You could say over his trilogy, he evolved as a person, as a man, but even within the games, Ezio evolved. Like, even within, I don't know about Brotherhood, because I can't really remember it too well, but definitely within Assassin's Creed 2, and definitely within Revelations, Ezio evolved as a character. And that's like any game, any game you'd want to see a character that's seriously narrative driven. You want to see the character evolve. You want to see some kind of progression in the person that they are, because like humans in and of themselves evolve as people, and that's just something that I don't see in this game at all, because there's there's no risk, no reward, nothing happens. The story is bland. So I don't really need to talk about graphics, because the graphics are, of course, they're great. They're really good. They hold up. The frame rate almost never dips, which is really good. I had a few glitches, one that almost like really kind of fucked up my PlayStation, where it was slowing my PlayStation down, and every game I tried to boot after was like slowed down. I had to reboot my PlayStation. Real weird stuff happening, but I don't think that happens too often. The game has somewhat long loading times, which is a little bit of a detriment. I think they could definitely patch that up. And, well, it's good, but it's not stupendous. Like if they want to really save this franchise, they're gonna have to pull out more stops. They're gonna need to diversify the gameplay more. And I don't know, maybe this is just the end of, well, not the end of Assassin's Creed, but maybe they already reached that peak. Maybe with Assassin's Creed 4 they went as far as they could. And I mean, really realistically speaking, no, they didn't. They could most certainly make another 4, but I don't know. So what would I give Assassin's Creed Syndicate? I mean, when you take into account that it works, it's fun for a while, the stuff is interesting for a little bit, but then it kind of, hankers in. Really, I can't give this game too much. I think I'm going to give this game an 80 out of 100. And the reason why I give it an 80 out of 100 is because the story is just blasé, bland. You almost want to, like, it feels like you're watching a silly little movie half the time with, this, you already know what's going to happen. There's no surprises, no plot twists, no right hooks. The gameplay gets old. It's good, but it gets old. It doesn't really diversify itself. The sequences are very short. The story is very, whatever. It's kind of just really easy to burn through. And I feel they want you to do a lot of repetitive side stuff. And I mean, that's not exactly what I would do, because that's really, a lot of the side stuff is exactly as it says. It's side stuff. It's boring. It's just for completionist shit. They didn't add anything really interesting besides like the couple of main character campaigns. So that's going to be it for this verdict. Really kind of disappointed, but not really, because I mean, my expectations after Unity were already in the toilet. So I mean, I'm not very disappointed. I'm more just blasé about it. It's like, oh, okay. And, you know what I mean? Like, Rogue did a better job of having a more investive plot. And I keep mentioning Rogue because that was the last game they released before starting this new line of Assassin's Creed games. Rogue, Black Flag 2, they all had much better narratives, much better stories, and much more interesting gameplay than this. This is just kind of like, they added a few cool features, don't get me wrong, to be able to upgrade your stuff, but I was maxing out everything like as early as chapter like 5. So when you do the game, where you play like all the side stuff first and all that, the game becomes a cakewalk. But when you don't, the game is boring and short. So take your pick. I mean, pick your poison with Syndicate. I think it's a good game. I don't think it's worth 60, and I don't really think that it has much longevity in terms of storyline and characters. And you know, they removed a lot of stuff I feel that makes the game really interesting. So that's going to be it for Syndicate. 80 out of 100. Could have been better. Hopefully they fix it up. Definitely much better than Assassin's Creed Unity, and by a long shot, but they really didn't improve too much. In fact, I don't think I gave Unity much more of a lower score, but again, remembering I played Unity 4 months or 2 months after it came out with the big patches. So okay, this game I think might be just slightly better than Unity in the fact that it runs pretty decently. I think I gave Unity like a 77 or something like that, but you have to bear in mind that was after the patches. This game I'm playing fresh off the grill. So that's going to be it for this verdict. Syndicate could have been much better, but hopefully we can move on, and hopefully the next one they'll get it down, and this trilogy or whatever they're building up to will progress. Because you know there's going to be another Assassin's Creed game. I mean, that's just the way it is at this point. They're yearly. So, all right. So that is all. I will see you guys later for the next verdict. Thank you for your time, and take care.